Ladies and gentlemen, when I was at the People's Convention in June in Detroit at the Kobe Center, Bug Hall, my co-host for that event, told me, he goes, I wasn't going to say it, bro, but I think I'm going to tell you. I got a friend that is in the campaign. I know somebody that works for the campaign. They are telling me that he's going to propose an elimination of the income tax, get rid of the payroll tax code. And I said, it's a smart thing. Congressman Paul wanted to do it too and said, we should do it and replace it with an excise tax on something else or a duty or an impost on whatever and just be done with it. Get rid of them. The entire accounting infrastructure will go away. Now, I believe that one of the things that's keeping the income tax in place, probably the only thing that's keeping it, are the NGOs and the nonprofits. I think you can still have a nonprofit and you just let the state deal with it. You're only then dealing with the state that you live in. If your state has nonprofits, Louisiana does. I have one, the CRUSADE Radio Guild. When you give a donation on YouTube or on at the crusadechannel.com/donate, if you go to Stripe, that is the CRUSADE Radio Guild. That is a registered, legal nonprofit in the state of Louisiana. It's an educational outfit. We teach radio broadcasting. So I don't think it will harm the nonprofits. I don't think it will harm the churches at all. They seem to have gotten along without it before the revisions of the tax code in 1958. Anyway, here's Trump on there. I want to talk to Don about this on the subject.
Today, I'm also announcing that as part of our additional tax cuts, we will end all taxes on overtime. You know what that means? Think of that. Think of that. Think of that.
I am thinking of it.
That gives people more of an incentive to work. It gives the companies it's a lot easier to get the people. And, I went to some economists, great ones, and I said, what do you think? They said, it would be unbelievable. You'll get a whole new workforce by doing that. No taxes on overtime.
Okay, all right. So he is gradually, Don Vincent, he is gradually making his way towards eliminating the tax code. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime. The only thing that's left now is hourly or salaried wages. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well. Nice to be with you again, Mike.
Our cultural affairs correspondent, Don from the Bronx of Florida. You agree with that? He's slowly but surely nibbling away at that tax code.
So this is the strategy that legislators here in Florida took on school choice. So you slowly nibble away at all the different, arguments against it until it's, and this is effectively what the left has done with the culture for decades,
right?
With all of their wedge social issues. So you slowly nibble away at the corners of the issue, and then eventually it becomes part of the mainstream, and people realize they like it, and they want it in totality. So that's what happened here in Florida with school choice. You start to implement these different scholarship programs, which benefit a small segment of the population. And now here in Florida, we have the most expansive school choice program in the entire country. So, that started with Jeb Bush back in the late 90s, and it's come to its complete fruition under Governor DeSantis. So it may take, 20, 25 years, but it's better to get started on it now than never. And, again, I think this is another appeal to getting men out to vote, because who tends to work overtime
plant workers
more often? And, yeah, exactly. Blue collar, muscle class, getting men out to vote. And this is the key to him winning. And, we continue to talk about it in the lead up to the election. The last election, women outvoted men by over 10 million votes.
Did they really? I didn't know that.
Yep. So women made up, it's pretty consistent. It's been that way for about the last 45 years or so. But women made up about 53% of the electorate, and men made up 47% of the electorate. It was the same thing actually in 2016, but men cut that gap under 10 million, and I think that actually proved to be the difference. particularly in those key Rust Belt Midwest states. So they've got to get that under 10 million. If they can get that down anywhere near 9.5 or 9 million, he wins the election.
Well, Don,
but that's key.
Yeah, Don, this puts heavy pressure on the union shops. You can't have the AFL-CIO out there denouncing this guy because the guys that work, the Teamsters. I know this because I know lots of people that are hourly, and I can tell you that one of the reasons why you dread the call for overtime is because you know that you're only going to get paid half, even though they're going to pay you time and a half. They're going to the tax rate that kicks in is the highest possible tax rate. I think it's 38%. The highest possible tax rate kicks in, and even though you may get some of it back at the end of the year, it sounds great that you're going to get overtime, and it's great. Time and a half, they're going to pay me. Yet you're also going to get sucked, and you're never getting the increase in Social Security tax that they're going to take from you. You're never getting that back. You're never getting the Medicare tax back that you're going to pay. You're never getting any of that back. So how do the big unions, how's the UAW, how does the Teamsters, how do any of the big union shops now come out and denounce Trump after this? I mean, this to me is you're right. This is a good move for your hourly working male.
And I would actually go a step further. I mean, if you want to appeal to these independent, supposed moderate voters, I would wipe out the tax on all bonuses. There's a lot of white-collar workers.
That's right.
There's a lot of white-collar workers that get absolutely destroyed by the tax on bonuses. And a lot of people that work in the financial industry or work in sales live off of bonuses. A lot of them are very low salary, high bonus. So if you do away the tax on bonuses, now you're really starting to cook because I think the tax on overtime affects more people, but the tax on bonuses will really have, an even more demonstrable impact on the economy and on future elections. So, listen, we got to get down to where there's no income tax. To me, any income tax is nefarious.
Yep.
And it robs you of your hard-earned wages. They have no right to that wage. And we operated just fine as a country when we were just raising money via tariffs and sales taxes, as Mike, as you've demonstrated, through your history lessons. So we don't need the income tax to survive. We did quite well, and many other countries did quite well for centuries. Many other states and many other republics did quite well without an income tax.
And when you have the kind of a market that you have here, you don't need it. As a matter of fact, Maggie, can you cue up for Don and for our listeners and viewers out there the J.D. Vance clip? I want to talk to you about J.D. Number 4, the second of the two clips, because this is on this subject here. There is a plan. Cackle is running around in North Carolina yesterday, and she was absolutely drunk and hysterical. She was worse than Winebox Nancy with the hysterical laughing. And it's a concept. He has a concept. And she was, of course, referring to Trump on a Tuesday night's debate, saying, we don't have a plan, a health care plan. We have a concept. And, of course, this is, you can't have a concept because we have Obamacare and all that. But the thing that they missed out on, and this J.D. Vance, they hit him. They fact-checked him on this, and they said that leading economists agree. If you do the tariffs you're talking about, it's going to amount to a sales tax increase, or basically a national sales tax, and the middle class is going to get clobbered, which is not true. And a lot of people say that. Here's what J.D. Vance said when I asked this question yesterday, Don. Take a listen.
Access to American markets. If you want access to American markets, you can't use Chinese slave labor to produce your products. You've got to be able to use American workers, and that's the whole thrust of Donald Trump's economic
Apple's
policies.
An evil company.
Yeah, can we talk about big tech? Yeah,
let's talk about
because
big
you
tech.
seem to have kind of
to answer Becky's question, do I think Apple's an evil company? No. Do I think that sometimes they benefit from Chinese slave labor? Yeah, and that's pretty sick. And I think that a company that wants to benefit from American markets should also have to pay American workers a fair wage.
I know the libertarians have an argument against this, man. There's a very small class of people, the libertarians. You know some, and I know some. The Austrian school people have an argument against this. I don't buy it. I think that Hilaire Belloc is correct. I think that economics for Helen. I think the classical economic thinking on this and how you should think in a society of solidarity and subsidiarity. Yes, you have to protect your workers from unfair advantages that another country has. But it is okay to trade. We don't have any issues with fair or free trade. What we have an issue with is unfair trade, and that's what JD is talking about. Tariffing Chinese slave labor goods is a smart idea. Now, maybe in the short run, you have to pay a bit more, but American citizens working in productive in producing goods at factories that are owned by that are American owned is ultimately a net benefit, and it benefits families too, because your wage structure and then your labor structure is one that is based here in the United States. What say you?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think Americans need to get off of, they are addicted to cheap Chinese crap. I mean, that's just effectively what it is. I mean, we've become addicted to a lot of things, and one of them is really cheap goods that are made poorly and don't serve and just contribute to the waste culture that we're a part of. And as it would be painful initially, and that cost would go up on certain items, but you'd end up getting better products that are better sourced. And, you know, obviously, I think the time has come to return many of these jobs to our country, especially with this influx of migrants and illegal immigrants that have come into this country. Someone has to do these jobs. And a lot of Americans have become, let's be frank, a lot of Americans think some of these jobs are beneath them. And they go to college to get a useless degree, and they come out and they don't want to do the jobs that a lot of we've outsourced to a lot of other countries.
That's
so
right.
It's going to be painful initially, but it has to return here. And under the Catholic principle of subsidiarity and solidarity, we must start to take this approach in terms of rebuilding the economy in a much more Catholic, much more humane economy.
We're talking with Don from the Bronx, Florida, our cultural affairs correspondent. He's also our numbers analyst. Hope you'll be with us on November the 5th, our numbers analyst for the upcoming election, for our election night coverage. And, of course, we don't want to repeat of 2020. We don't want
boy,
that
was a disaster.
It was a disaster.
You take all the numbers and throw them out the window because, I mean, they basically threw the votes out the window. So
they did. I'll just stay on the subject here with J.D. Vance, Maggie. I did put on Twitter that we were going to talk about is Pope Francis a heretic or not, because I'm going to read that tweet and we'll talk a little bit about that. We may have to wait to the next segment. But I want to talk about J.D. Vance. I told Mike Parrott the day that it was announced on Tuesday at the RNC that this was the biggest. This was the number 3, digital media file number 3. This was I think the greatest blow for public policy and Catholicism in the last century. Vance is a convert. That means he's a great vert. Vance is a student of St. Thomas and St. Augustine. Vance was with the right people when he converted. JD is as smart as a whip. He's an Ivy League guy. He knows the principles of subsidiarity and solidarity because he learned them during his conversion process. He fiddled around with other religions, and he wasn't interested. They weren't convincing to him. So I believe that he's a good Catholic. Yes, he has to say yes to his president. He's not at the head of the ticket. If they say IVF, J.D. Vance is in no position to say no. Now, privately, and he shouldn't be out endorsing it, and I haven't heard that he has, but maybe I missed it. Well, I think J.D. Vance is coming into his own here, and he is owning people in the media because he's just smarter than they are. He is just Catholic, Saint Thomas, well-formed. He's Joe Doyle. He's just smarter than they are. Play digital media file number 3 for Don. and for our audience.
But let me ask you about this for just very quickly. I heard Donald Trump before this debate describe Kamala Harris as, I'll just read a few of them, a low IQ individual, somebody who doesn't have the mental capacity to be president, really dumb, unable to put two sentences together. Is that what you saw on the stage tonight?
John, what I saw was a lot of slogans. I think the American people are smart, and Kamala Harris talks to them like they're children. She repeats these ridiculous platitudes where if you actually think about what she said, you realize that it doesn't make any sense. She talks a lot about her plans, but then her plans, when you analyze the substance, don't make any sense. And more importantly, John, the American people don't get fed on plans. She has been the vice president for 3.5 years. What she can't do, refuses to do, and has no ability to do is to say,
okay,
I accomplished lower prices, because she didn't. Or I accomplished lower housing prices because she didn't. Or I secured the southern border because she didn't do that. She has failed as vice president. And the fundamental question is, do we want to give her a promotion? I think the answer has to be no, John.
And he's trying to shut him up. Don, I can't wait for this guy to be a presidential candidate. I mean, good Lord. He is maturing in real time. And this guy is if I was a leftard, I'd be afraid to interview him.
Yeah, I think they're afraid of guys like J.D. Vance, and I will say Governor DeSantis as well, because they're both. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two of them.
I agree.
They're very, very, very quick on their feet. They're very quick with retorts. They have the knowledge base in their head. They can spit out facts very quickly, and they're fairly consistent with on the issues. I think he's improved. And I think that's what he did when he actually ran for Senate in Ohio. He improves over time and gets better and better at what he's doing. It's the mark of someone who's obviously very intelligent, very competent. I'd love to see him be a little bit more. I think it comes through in his commentary, but I'd like to see some of that Catholicity come through a bit more on some of the social issues. But we have to get there, and at least there's hope there with him. There's no hope with Tim Walz or Kamala. I mean, Tim Walz is just so. I think we have to be hopeful and pray that they continue to grow, that he continues to grow in his faith, that President Trump could, eventually convert to the one true faith. And I think he's been the best attack dog I can remember. I mean, he's certainly better than Dan Quayle or Al Gore or Mike
Don,
Pence.
hold that thought. Okay, back to Don Vincent. Don, I want to ask you this question here. We were talking about J.D. Vance in the last segment here. Pope Francis appeared at an event yesterday saying something to the effect of, quote, every religion is a way to arrive at God. There are different languages to arrive at God, but God is God for all. But my God is more important than your God. Is that true? There is only one God, and each has a language to arrive at God. Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, they are different paths, close quote. Is that a heresy?
According to some previous popes, it was, but I don't know. We're in Catholicism 2024, so I don't know. What is still a heresy and not a heresy. It sounds a lot. Honestly, it sounds a lot like what Bishop Barron said to Ben Shapiro when Ben Shapiro interviewed him a few years back. So, I mean, this is the Church of Nice. This is the church of, the past 40, 50 years, whatever you want to call it. Is anybody surprised at this point? I mean, this stuff just comes out of this guy's mouth. I hate to put it that way, but I'm trying to mute myself and edit myself here in terms of my true opinions. It's incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating for lay people, because there are really, really good lay people out here in the world trying to help bring about Christ's kingdom on this earth and trying to bring about conversions. And he makes it very difficult for people to want to convert. Why should someone convert when they hear things like that? Why would you ever want to convert? Because you would say, well, my path is I'm just going to follow my path, and then I'll just arrive at the same destination as the one that they're on.
Yeah.
So
if I could take the Hindu path and I get the sacred cow, literally, and all the other things that come. The Hindu gods are evil. All three of the Hindu demigods have snakes as part of of their
They're demons.
Demons, yeah. They have snakes as part of their iconography here. I think the real thing that is, let's just take, for example, and I didn't ask her this, so I'm not going to say that she would say this, but I'm just going to just take the real life example of someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a cradle Catholic, married in the Catholic Church, raised Catholic. In her own words, when Bill Donahue said something about her 2 years ago, she, the Catholic League, she came out and says, "You don't know what the hell you're talking about. I am a Catholic. I'm baptized. I'm confirmed. I was married in the church. I left the church. I didn't leave the church. The church left me." It's kind of the same thing Ronald Reagan said. "I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me." I don't want to put too fine of a point on this and try and make a pronouncement on this, because I don't want people that are smarter than me and do this stuff for a living, and I don't want to undermine any priest out there or bishops or people in authority. So I'm just talking about this from a layperson's point of view, guys, okay? This is mine and Don's little conversation about this. We're free to have it. I'm not trying to change Vatican policy. I'm not trying to undermine my bishop. I would never do that. But I am free to have a conversation about it, and I'm going to. So there's the disclaimer. Here's what I wish to say about it. Why would someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, why should I come back to the church? The Holy Father's out there telling the world that the church is no different from the Hindu demon gods. You know, if I can get to God through the worship of the Hindu demon gods, which also they don't have a fealty towards some of the things that Christians do, well, then why wouldn't I choose that path? If I can get there through Buddha, I don't even ever have to get married. I can pop out all the kids I want. Don't ever have to have a spouse. Why wouldn't I take that path? You know, he says Muslim and Sikh. If I can get to God through Allah and Muhammad, and I get 72 virgins at the end of the day, if I go out and kill people, well, maybe I fancy killing. You look at this from a layperson's point of view, and you go like, is that really you guys' religion? I mean, maybe it's a good thing because it gives you a chance to explain it. Go like, no, that's not our religion. That's not the faith. So maybe we're looking at it the wrong way. Maybe it creates opportunities. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to me that the Holy Father is aiding and assisting people that may be on the fence. And I just use Marjorie Taylor Greene because if she were to hear something like that, why come back to the faith? Of course, the Holy Ghost is the reason, because the faith is the faith and it hasn't changed, and he can't change it. That's why so I'm going to answer the question, but from a public point of view, what I just said, I think, is what most people, that would be their reaction to it. And I don't know how you practically disagree with that.
No, you can't. To me, this has been my issue with him since the moment he said, "Who am I to judge?" The writing was on the wall with that first statement back, and I think the first 3 months of his pontificate was, "Who am I to judge?" I knew right then and there who this person was, what his goals and aims were, and that he was going to do tremendous damage to the body of the church. But obviously, God always has other plans, and he can bring good out of evil.
Sure.
And I think in that time frame, we've seen tremendous movement towards traditional Catholicism, towards the traditional Roman Rite, towards the traditions of the church. We've seen families growing and flourishing, young families, people having more and more children. Conversions continue to happen, particularly in Africa and I think in the United States as well. But there's obviously still there's still a ton of work to be done. Europe has practically lost the faith, and the Chinese Catholics are suffering under their persecution that they have there, and he's not doing anybody any favor.
Well,
put it this way, he's not making it easier for anyone to convert, but he's challenging people who have the intellectual curiosity to want to learn more and the desire for truth and faith.
Yeah, and maybe, as I said, maybe we're looking at this the wrong way. Maybe someone would go like, really? You Catholics really believe that? And maybe if you looked in it and go like, well, no. Well, then how come he can say it? Well, and then this gets into the whole thing, and I don't want to have a discussion about it because people just get angry about it, about papal infallibility and all that. But you don't understand what that means. What he just said there is not an infallible statement. He didn't make it as an infallible statement. And I'm not a theologian. I'm not even going to try to play one on the radio. Maybe Eric Sammons.
Pope Eugene IV at the Council of Florence spoke ex cathedra on this very topic. It's called Contante Domino.
Yes.
And it's the Holy Roman Catholic Church firmly believes, professes, and preaches that all those who are outside the Catholic Church, not only pagans, but also Jews or heretics and schismatics, cannot share an eternal life and will go into the everlasting fire which was prepared for the devil and his angels unless they are joined to the church before the end of their lives. It goes on. But basically, no matter how much he has given away in alms, and even if he has shed blood in the name of Christ, unless he has persevered in the bosom and unity of the Catholic Church. That's it. I mean, that's the teaching right there. We can deny it all we want. We can want to shun and say, "Oh, that's uncomfortable," because my neighbor down the street, he's such a good guy, and he goes to Super Grace Church down the road, and
Church of the King down the road from me here, the Church of the Rock Climber.
Right, exactly.
Now, Eugene IV? What century is that?
The 15th century.
Okay.
But we can go back. We can go even more recently, and this is on Catholicism.org. Brother Andre Marie put this out back in 2010. Gregory the 16th, Morare Vos, I believe it's pronounced, on the heresy of indifferentism, and that's what I believe this is. This is the heresy of indifferentism.
What is it? There is a heresy of indifferentism statement also there from a pope. It's from the 9th century, I want to say.
It probably is. Probably though.
If I had my
Gregory the 16th is from the 19th century, so it's 1832.
Okay, so if I had my Father Leonard Feeney card here, extra ecclesiam nulla salad. I want extra eclairs on my Nutella salad card. He lists the 4 popes, and I can't remember the first one, but I want to say that it's a single-digit pope. And the point that I would make about that, friends, and all of you listening, is that then is the religion that Charlemagne, Charles the Magnificent, lived under and formed what we call France today under. That is the religion that England and St. Augustine of Canterbury, for example, and St. Thomas Becket, were formed under. Their governments were formed, their kingdoms were formed, their monarchies were formed, their common law was formed, their traditions, their customs. You like French cuisine? You wouldn't have it without that statement. Without a Christianity, you don't get culinary secrets from the Arab world. No one is sitting around going like, look at my new Arab world Arab-inspired cooking culinary delights. No. Maybe there are cooking snakes and monkey heads and whatnot. I don't know. But I can tell you that the culinary genius and the culture that came out of old Europe came primarily from the country of France. France is the eldest daughter of the church. That's not an accident. She was founded and she was consecrated in the early days by Saint Denis. You don't have Saint Denis, you don't have Paris, because the pagans are never kicked out. If there's no Saint Denis, then there's no Notre Dame de Paris, and the list goes on and on and on. As it was Archbishop or Cardinal Newman said, to be Protestant is to be outside of history. He said this before he converted. And I don't say this to anger people. People must understand, I myself was a completely and totally awful, bad, fallen away Catholic, probably a pagan at one point in my life for about 20 years there. So I am well familiar with the Burger King, you can have it your way menu, what to believe. I can tell you my life is much more structured and ordered and far better from the way I think that I act, I hope it is, as a subject of the Queen of Heaven, as a subject of the King of Heaven, and of their one true Holy Catholic and Apostolic religion here on this earth. Now, this is another thing that Don and I should wrap up with. When we say this is not to go and rub somebody's nose in it. The Catholic faith, if you're practicing it, requires you to say it. It is it's not an option. You don't get to go, well, I'm not going to say that in public. Well, then you're not a Catholic. And whoever told you that you have the option of that lied to you. That's not true. Now, you don't have to go out and find people and yell it at them. But if you are brought to the point where you're asked a question and you have to either profess or not profess, to not profess is to apostatize. So, yes, you are required to say it. And John, final question. I don't know why men of our generation are so afraid of this. I'm not afraid of it. And look, I haven't made a lot of Protestant enemies. I have great friends that are Protestants. And we even kind of have running jokes about it. All right, King Dude, you're going to say the Catholic prayer in Latin. I'm going to say the meal prayer for the lunch and just a good old Protestant prayer in English. And there's nothing heretical in that prayer. So I don't know why there has to be why is there this fear? Is it because we truly live in the social media age and we don't want someone to unfriend us or not like us?
Yeah, I think that's basically what it is, and we have a lot of weak men. Like you led into our talk here today, talking about is it the Catholic Warrior? Is that what it's called? The
Catholic Warrior Fitness, yes. Catholic
Warrior Fitness. I think if more men get into getting their souls into shape, their bodies, physical bodies into shape, we will see good fruits bear in this world. I think it's really, really important that you're not only working on your soul, but you're working on your physical body. It will give you the confidence to speak boldly, to speak the truth, to not have fear about, confronting people or standing up for the truth. I think the two go hand in hand. And I'm so awesome to hear that they're an advertiser on the Crusade channel, because I think these two things are linked. I think we have a lot of weak men who shy away from conflict, who shy away from confrontation. And I think it spills over into conversations about faith. And I think there's also, I'm going to say it, like a kind of a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant mentality of you don't discuss politics and religion, which Chesterton disagreed with vehemently and said the only thing to talk about is politics and religion. So I think, we need to embrace that and be confident in talking about the things that we truly believe. Men need to get out of the man caves, get into the gym, and get on their knees before the Blessed Sacrament. And we'll see a huge change in this culture if those two things happen.
Well, we are culture warriors. We are crusaders, and that's why we have a crusade channel. And this is one of the charisms that we have. We spent a lot of time this year. We did a lot of politics. We're still doing campaign stuff. But I think it's important to remind people. And look, President Trump did something on Sunday. Final thing to talk about. Warmed my heart. I know it made you smile from ear to ear. Mm-hmm. He did something that at least 85 to 90% of Catholics around the world that went to Mass on Sunday did not have said to them, which was Happy Birthday, Mary. Instead, they got 23rd Sunday in ordinary time. I don't even know if it was on the calendar that day, but the fact that in the traditional rite with good traditional people who are trying to do the right thing and are trying to get closer to God and farther away from Mammon in this world, we had a wonderful feast day Sunday. Just happened to fall on a Sunday, September the 9th, and that was the feast of the Nativity of Our Lady, the feast of St. Joachim and St. Anne, and the birth of Mary. And for President Trump to have come out and to put that picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe on true social media and on X.com to say Happy Birthday, Mary. And I saw the last time I looked, there was 16 million people. 55.9 million people liked that image, John. That is, let's thank President Trump for getting that one right. And what a great start to a Sunday morning for so many people.
Yeah, a lot of bishops should take notice that they shouldn't hide from the faith. This is even someone that doesn't even have the faith and had the guts to say Happy Birthday, Mary, to all of his followers. Yes, he's done some things recently that have angered a lot of us. I know you and I talked about that Catholics for Catholics letter, that they approached him and I think probably corrected him on some of the things he was talking about regarding IVF and abortion. And I think he knows he needs to reach Catholics, and I think he's trying. But I think even if this is a political move, it's still a bold move. And Dr. Kwasniewski actually said something very similar. Very few politicians would even think to wish the Blessed Mother a happy birthday. In fact, most Catholic politicians would not think to wish the Blessed Mother a happy birthday. Right. And we're seeing it. We're starting to see a shift here. Like there's a Pew poll, and polls can be, you could take them or leave them, but they are what they are. In 2020, Catholics went. It was 50-49 Trump amongst Catholics. White Catholics 57-42. That has shifted now, where it's 52-47 amongst all Catholics, and amongst white Catholics, it's plus 23. So he shifted 8 points to the positive with white Catholics here in this country. So here coming for the election.
And let me say this to you, Don, and all of our listeners out there. God bless all of you for listening today, and thank you very much for all that you do for us. Let me say this to you. I talked to George Webb yesterday, and I didn't know this, but George kind of broke the news here on his Substack. Melania Trump's book was not going to be about the attempt on her husband's life. Melania's book was going to be about her. It was like a coffee table book, her big moments in the Rose Garden, greeting Super Bowl champions, doing the Christmas tree setup, which she was very, very good at and beautiful. But she instead took the opportunity and said, "No, my husband. They are trying. What happened to investigation on the assassination attempt on my husband? There is something that is not very good." When I look at Melania, you know what I see? I see Mary. I see a Mary. She's a Marian image. She's a Marian person. She's graceful, right? She dresses beautifully, modestly, humbly. I see, an imitation of Our Lady in that. And I think that Melania coming out, Trump wishing Our Lady happy birthday, there is a Marian tinge, would you agree or not, to the remainder of this kind of election cycle here?
I've never quite thought that, but I hope that's the case, and it's beautiful that you see that. I really do hope that. I don't know her specific. I know she has somewhat of a Catholic background, going back to her home country, and I hope that she's practicing her faith. I hear very little, so I don't know, but I truly do hope. I know she obviously dressed beautifully when she met the Pope, and very respectfully veiled and everything, and so I do hope. And she had her rosary beads. I hope she prays those rosary beads. They had the White House exorcised when they first moved in.
She did.
So there's something happening.
And we know
there.
who did it. Justice Scalia's son did it. We know who did it.
That's right. Yeah. So something is happening there, and I hope she has a priest that she speaks to, right? A spiritual director that is advising her, that's helping her advise her husband. So we can only pray and hope that she's having a positive influence, and she's getting influenced by someone who has.
Well, look, it's been, we're out of time.
Yeah, who has the capabilities of doing so.
Yeah, it's been 2 weeks since we had the conversation with Eric Sammons here, right on here on the Crusade Radio Network, where we all expressed our frustration, the IVF thing, the abortion thing. There has been a complete and total about-face from President Trump. Would you not agree?
Definitely. I think that, and he's flipped. Yeah.
Okay. The debate on Tuesday night, he just did the exceptions. I'm for the exceptions. He didn't do the weeks. Didn't say anything about IVF or other than you're wrong. I defended IVF. I'm for life and all that. Again, I think that you're right. I think some Catholics in his orbit got to him and like, Miss President, you can't. Don't say that. Don't do that. And when he did it, it didn't sound like it was him to me anyway, but the real Trump was, I think, on Tuesday night. Great things are happening, folks. Regardless of your denomination, pray for President Trump to become the most practicing Christian in the White House that we have ever had. That's a net victory for all of us, Don, from the Bronx.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's the goal is obviously to get to heaven. So we're just here pilgrims on this earth, and it would be nice to live under a president that actually respects our faith.
Sure would, and let's pray it happens. We at least know we have a vice president that respects our faith. We'll go with that. Mm-hmm. All right, he is Don from the Bronx, Florida, our cultural affairs correspondent and Friday guest.
Thanks,
Don,
Mike.
thank you very much, brother.
Have a blessed weekend.
All right, you too.